Hey, John Rothmann.
Mark, I have to tell you, I'm picturing you and Kim and Albert smashing the grapes a la I Love Lucy.
That's what they have that at Tenuta. You can literally go there with a crew and you can smash your own grapes a la I Love Lucy. That's absolutely going on at Tenuta Vineyard in Livermore. So it's a great kind of family fun thing as well as bottling some great wines. So they have the thing. Yeah, that literally can happen and might happen. I'd love to go bottle. I'll tell you what. I'll go with Kim and Albert if we can get Rothmann to crush grapes with us. If we can work that out logistically, I'm all about that.
We're going to get Rothmann. Who is having that conversation?
What's that, John?
You might say I'm willing to toe the line. I do have a question.
Wow.
Do they also do grape juice?
I will tell you that my particular Why Are You Yelling Red is one of the most respected wines in the entire Livermore Valley.
Why are you yelling?
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to get your thoughts today, John Rothmann. I know we talk oftentimes about geopolitical events, which I'm happy to touch on, as I am the world of Trump and the coming elections and national politics. But I really wanted to get your comments. In the first hour, I talked about this. It's a spiral of descent. I'm talking of descending into a bad place that the city of San Francisco seems to find itself in. The closing of the Whole Foods market, their flagship store, for safety reasons. They couldn't guarantee the safety of their employees. There's a sense in the city for all the reasons that I was detailing in the first hour and that you're all too familiar, which is why I wanted to talk to you about it. There's a sense that San Francisco really may be on a kind of decline that we really can't pull out of. I wonder if you could speak to that.
Well, first thing is that my son lives right there by the Whole Foods. He's in one of those apartment buildings. So I'm down there quite often. The closing of Whole Foods is absolutely shocking, but even worse is to walk down the street where my son lives on Mission and see the drug dealing going on right there. San Francisco needs a change in leadership. It needs to confront the fact that we have this serious problem. We need to have candidates who will seek political office, who will rise to the challenge. There needs to be better coordination in this city in terms of law enforcement. I spoke with one of my colleagues the other day who said there are two things that San Francisco has to do. It has to have clean streets, and it has to deal with the question of the homeless. And I agree that those are the two pressing issues. Clean streets are a serious problem. And let me also indicate to you that there needs to be a coordination of law enforcement in San Francisco. The chief of police, the sheriff, the district attorney, the city attorney, the public defender, all have to come together, and there has to be a common plan. There are many who ask the question, how do we confront this? Regrettably, the people of San Francisco voted to move the election for the next mayor to 2024. And London Breed has got her hands full in terms of trying to cope with these problems. I was interested to see that CNN is going to do a special hour on the problems of San Francisco. Once upon a time, we were the city that knows how. That's what we were told. It would seem now that we have serious problems. I intend to be in the center of the discussion about that. In fact, I was asked to moderate a panel dealing with whether or not there should be centers where people can have drugs administered in a safe way. There'll be a pro and a con. I am only moderating, but I think, Mark, these are very serious times for San Francisco. I am a fourth generation San Franciscan. And as I like to point out, I was mayor of San Francisco in Youth in Government Day in 1966.
Come on.
Yep. The best run day in the history of San Francisco. And so I am deeply committed to being involved in this and actively in any campaign that evolves.
John, let me ask you about drugs. I'll get to some of the other issues in a second, but you mentioned the drugs thing. You mentioned the debate that you're going to moderate. Where do you stand on safe spaces for those who are drug dependent?
I'm very clear about this, Mark. I don't want to see anybody die, but I don't think it's safe spaces we need. It's medical facilities that can treat this as a medical problem and who can intervene on that basis.
So
The
you don't
idea-
want to, excuse me, pardon me for interrupting, but you don't want to then enable the addiction. You want interdiction. You want to stop the addictions. Okay.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
That is exactly correct. I have a cousin who was a heroin addict who went through this whole process. I have great sympathy for people, but I think that to encourage the use of drugs or to provide a safe space is something that I do not favor. At the same time, I wish that every hospital would have the ability to treat people who are coming through with major addiction problems. Take a walk on Mission Street, take a walk through the Tenderloin, and you see the problem growing. And may I say one other thing? It's a terrible thing to say, Mark. We talk about safety involved in these things. The people who are addicted don't give a tinker's damn about safety. They want their fix. And that's the other thing. I would come down hard on the suppliers. I believe that the district attorney in this city has an obligation to pursue to the full extent of the law in order to prevent that. And
but you don't feel, isn't that happening with the new DA now? There's been a change in leadership in the district attorney's office.
Yes, but I haven't seen any substantial change. I happen to like her very much personally, but I can't attest to what her record is. When we were on KGO, we had her in regularly to talk about these problems. I think she's under siege as well. May I ask a simple question of all of our listeners? Even with the best of intentions, is there a way to solve the problem? I just heard Kim do a report on what's happening in Beverly Hills. This is a problem for the whole city and perhaps for the state. By the way, you heard that Gavin Newsom came out against those safe areas. London Breed is in favor of them. We have
but these are two things at odds with each other, John Rothman. It's you talk about how this problem is a contagion that spread, as you suggest, to Beverly Hills, and as we were just saying. There's a sense that we are being overwhelmed, our communities, even the highest end communities, by this problem. So the safe spaces idea was to handle it so that you don't have these people shooting up on the street or doing whatever on the street, and that you don't have people dying on the streets of these cities and communities. So you can see how these two things are at odds with each other in a way.
Except there's no such thing as a safe space. You and I understand that you can have those kinds of centers. It doesn't mean people will go to them. It doesn't mean that the streets will be cleaned. It doesn't mean any of that. Look, if I were mayor of San Francisco, I would move aggressively with hospitals, with healthcare, to try to provide treatment, because that's what's needed here. And if people don't want treatment, we are left with the same problem.
The truth is, John, most don't want. Many addicts, as you know, and because even you reference your own family, you're dragging them kicking to screaming, if you can drag them at all to treatment.
And that's why it's really a pointless exercise. I can tell you what we can do, and that is to make sure the streets are clean. And I am very much in favor of regular street patrols. We actually, when I was a kid, people were hired in San Francisco to sweep the streets. It wasn't the machine doing it. It was people who went out and who, by the way, served as social workers at the same time. I really think, Mark, this is a growing problem. And anybody who chooses to run for mayor of San Francisco is going to confront the fact that some of these problems are insoluble, but need to be addressed and need to be coordinated. The medical facilities, the legal aspects of this, all of this have to come together to try to deal with it. It doesn't mean we're going to have a magic wand to solve the problem, but that does mean, though, that when a Whole Foods or a Walgreens here in San Francisco has to close because there is no alternative to making sure that you can't steal and pilfer, there is something seriously wrong. And if I were mayor of San Francisco or district attorney of San Francisco, these people would be prosecuted.
So that's what I wanted to get to. So you're saying then, and when we talk about these people, you would start sweeping those streets, that is, scooping up all of those open drug abusers, and you treat it as a criminal offense? Is that the solution?
It's a medical problem.
Okay.
That does have a criminal component. And therefore, law enforcement has to be involved with medical officials to try to deal with this problem. You cannot have businesses in San Francisco close because they're afraid to function. If you and I, if your wine who are on a shelf and somebody could just come in and take it, that would not be good business. And it
Thank you for
our
putting it in terms that I can understand. And now all of a sudden this situation has touched me personally because somebody could jack my wine from Tenuta Vineyard. But let me...
It is all personal. It is all personal. It should be.
When you can't walk the streets or park your car, or I mean, then of course you're right, and you're seeing a disintegration of a world-class city potentially. But again, to press the point, I feel as though we have an overwhelming drug problem in the city, and not enough beds. If you treat it as a medical problem, I mean, okay, so you're just pushing the problem to hospitals. Great. There are not enough spaces in hospitals. I don't know the solution to this, and it's kind of a loathsome notion that you have these safe spaces for people to shoot up or do whatever they're going to do. To me, it makes my skin crawl that we have to do that. But if you don't, and you're right, you got to get these people off the street, where do you put them? You've got two options, jail or the hospital, right?
Look, you're right. And that's the reason why the problem is so tough. And anybody who runs for mayor of San Francisco and says that they can solve this problem is just plain wrong. Because now it's not just a question of homelessness. It's not just a question of economics. It is a question of health and safety. And may I say, when I walk down the street, and frankly, people know who I am. They greet me. Some of the drug dealers know me, and they say, "Hi, John, how are you?"
Oh my God!
This is, well, I've been a personality here in town for many, many years.
I get it.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
I've had people who've come to me and asked me to run for mayor, and my answer has been, I am willing to do anything to save this city, and I say that publicly and clearly and precisely. The question is, what are the tools that we have to do what needs to be done? And there is no one, not the mayor and not potential candidates for mayor, who have a solution, meaning we have to come together to work as a community to try to resolve the issues. I have to tell you, when Kim opened with the story from Beverly Hills, I said to myself, this is a cancer that is spreading that needs to be treated quickly. But these are human beings, and I'm well aware of the fact that these are human beings. And even a person who is an addict is a human being who should be treated with dignity and care. But at the same time, we have to protect the city of San Francisco and its residents, the people who live here, who are law-abiding people. And when a Whole Foods can close or a Walgreens can close, and you see an impotence on the part of city government, we've got a real problem. And frankly, it needs to be addressed firmly and precisely and effectively. And that means the Board of Supervisors as well. One of the reasons, well, I won't get into my own.
No, but that's a great point. I was just about to ask you, how much power does the mayor have in San Francisco?
Very little.
Exactly.
But a mayor with the Board of Supervisors working together. But the political currents are such that it just isn't happening. But do you understand? This is a terrible blow. I have a friend who's coming out here, Irv Gelman, who's one of the leading political scholars in this country. He's written several books on Richard Nixon and on Franklin Roosevelt. The guy is a top-notch guy. He's coming out here, and I made his reservation for him. And he said, "Is it safe?" And I said, "Irv, I will tell you where it is not safe. But I will also tell you that, yes, San Francisco, by and large, is a city in which you can visit and feel safe. And I hope I am proven correct."
I'd like to ding impotence.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll dig it. You're absolutely right. Thank you, Kim.
But isn't that, it's a terrible thing. I love this city. I've been involved in the politics of this city for decades.
Of course. That's why I wanted to talk to you about it. I think it's exactly right. It's a sad, literally sad. It makes me sad. It's a world-class city, John. And honestly, you see the limitations from a policy standpoint. You're really limited. I mean, if you were mayor tomorrow, I got to be honest. I mean, yeah, we got to clean up the streets. We got to get these drugs. Yeah, we all know that. But the actual policies that you have to craft to bring about those changes, I feel you're handcuffed as mayor.
One would be handcuffed, and that's the reason why it cannot be one person. It has to be a team effort. And that's why, were I mayor, I would bring together all of the law enforcement people, all the medical people, and I would say, okay, let's construct a paradigm that can be a model for this city that can really effectively deal with the problem, recognizing that it won't solve the problem. It will only be a stopgap to try to improve where we are. But I can tell you, because of my son and where he lives and the fact that I was going into that Whole Foods with him, that this is one of the most profoundly disturbing situations. And they're not closing for any other reason than they feel their own employees are threatened.
Exactly.
That is absolutely appalling. I have a Walgreens in our neighborhood. Thank God we have a Walgreens, but they've closed 5 locations here in San Francisco because people aren't safe.
Right. And that Whole Foods is magnificent. I mean, that was just a great store. Paradigm
and
is a big word.
It's only about a year. It's only about a year old, and that is another serious question. Who in their right mind, in certain neighborhoods of San Francisco, would choose to open a business? And what does it mean when you can't have a business in an area for the people who live there? It is a domino effect across the city. Now, I was asked, do I blame London Breed? Look, I blame all of us, but the mayor of San Francisco certainly is the point person on this, but she is joined by all of her predecessors.
Right.
All of them have wrestled with this problem. Gavin Newsom wrestled with it. Willie Brown wrestled with it.
And it didn't just start with London Breed. Right.
No, of course not. And it's a cumulative problem. It's when you look for someone to blame, it's very easy. But running for mayor of San Francisco, one recognizes the limitations which we all face. But
John,
it's a possibility. I may run just because someone has to confront the problem and talk to people frankly and honestly about it, and that I believe I can do.
Well, I'll tell you something. That would be terrific. I mean, I'd love to see you in I think what you're talking about also in terms of putting together a coalition is what's required. It's just not a city where the mayor has a lot of power unless that coalition is formed. So I love that you've touched on that. In our last second, was there something I had to, let me put my credibility glasses on and I can read it. Drove over for an event to the city, first time there in a few years, witnessed a naked woman throwing her poo into the street as a pedestrian walked by. Yes, that's one of the, if that's all you saw, you didn't actually get a smash and grab also. If you weren't a victim of your stuff being ripped off, then I'm afraid we can't award any points.
Yeah,
but it happens all the time. Public defecation and public urination. I talk about it all the time.
It's a very complex problem, and this city has to confront that problem or it won't function as a city. And that, to me, is the most disturbing. Look, you better get the Department of Public Works in and working with the people of San Francisco. You better get a real coalition of people who care. And let me tell you, I'm someone who's really committed to the city. If I were to choose to run for mayor, Mark, I recognize that I would be smart enough to tell people I'm not going to wave a magic wand and solve the problems. But what they'll get from me are straight answers and a real effort. And that's something we need to think about.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see. Yeah. I mean,
when do we have a decision on whether you'll run for mayor?
The election is in 2024, in November. So I have plenty of time. Somebody asked me the other day, when are you going to announce? I said, if I choose to run, I need a good 10 months before the election in order to really organize things. So I would look about the first of the year.
Okay.
All right. Well, you heard it here. That's strong. Yeah. Love it. John Rothmann as the mayor of San Francisco. Why not?
A lot of support in the chat for you already.
Yeah, you could start your campaign. Run, John, says Sharon. Yes, John, says Sayo. Huge in Japan. John, I'd move there just to vote for you. Wow.
See? Yeah.
Yes, John for mayor, says Calvin.
And let me tell you, I'm very serious, though. I've been approached by people here in San Francisco on the left and the right who have said that they have confidence in me as an individual. But I recognize that not one individual can solve the problem. It has to be a coalition. And if I were to run, I would try to build that coalition. And let me tell you, the media would have access to me. I have no fear of the media. I think the media is essential. I want to put in a plug for KPIX. They did an hour last weekend on the problems in the Tenderloin. It's what provoked me to take a walk in the Tenderloin once again. It is that kind of exposure, that kind of knowledge that the people of San Francisco have to have about neighborhoods. No neighborhood is exempt from this. None. We have a park across the street from us. We had a homeless person in that park. And It was simply an indication of a broader problem here in the city.
John, wish we had more time. Look forward to the next conversation. Really glad we got into this conversation as deeply as we did, though, because it's an intractable problem on some level, but it also is a problem that stares us in the face and has a radical, I mean, dramatic effect on the future life in the Bay Area.
Nothing can be intractable. For every problem, there is a solution, but I want to say it requires a team effort. It will require a lot of leadership and a lot of struggle, and yes, arguments, which are great in order to try to solve the problem. And Mark and Kim, thank you very much. And if I had a bottle of your wine here, or let's make it grape juice, I would drink it first. Mark Thompson.
Intractable is a ding word, though. You're right. John Rothmann, the great one. All right, John. Stay in touch. We'll see you next week at your regular time.
Yep, and look at Kim, please. Please notice she is holding up that bottle. Find out if they're going to bottle grape juice, too, will you, please?
No.
Oh, yeah. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.